Psychic Kids Network. And today I just felt it was a great, fun class to have about learning all about the star seeds and the children that are coming to make waves and shift our consciousness and our planet. And I know some of this stuff sounds a little crazy for those of you who are just starting to open up to this realm. I want to tell you that if I say some stuff and you're just like, what? Don't get hung up on it. Just allow that information to wash over you. So some things you'll be like totally agreeing with. Some things might feel a little out there for you, and please just know that's okay. It's where you're at in your journey. Some things I never ever want you to believe anything that you don't feel comfortable believing. So that I just wanted to state that before we get started. But this class is going to run down the different types of star seeds. And it's interesting because I have a whole lot of notes, so I am going to refer to those because there's so many little details about each little group. And I'm excited to share them with you. And you'll notice as we go on that there will be even some things in your own self that you'll find through each one of these groups. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you believe in reincarnation, you might have been one of those other star seeds coming through again. You will notice different qualities, maybe in your parents or in your grandparents, depending on your age. You'll notice things in yourself or through your peers that are your age. You're going to notice some of these things in your kids, in your neighbors' kids, in your nieces and your nephews and your grandkids, and your friends' kids. You're going to notice different things. Now, a lot of these techniques, a lot of these characteristics are just they're not like hard fast. Like just because you have some of them doesn't mean you are that group or whatever. Not everybody comes through as these different star seeds, as these different groups of the blue rays. Not everybody in that age group or time span was a blue ray that came through. Not everybody that is, around my age or so, maybe a little younger, are indigo children. Not every child born today is going to be a rainbow, starseed or crystal starseed. So just keep that into mind as we work through this class. Each one of these soul groups or these classes of beings, starseeds, are coming through with a different intention or a different purpose. And so we'll start first with the blue rays, and their mission was to come here before anybody else even considered thinking about spiritual concepts, like a higher potential, freedom, consciousness, all of those things. They came in to like break the ice. So to infiltrate the system, like in the normal capacity, not blow it up like that was more of the indigos. We'll get there in a second. But the blue rays were a little bit more chill about it. They didn't struggle and fight with everything. They were different. Their biggest struggle seemed to be, from my research, they had a strong sense of belief in themselves and in creativity, in a different view of love. And if you want to think about it as like that, free love era, and even a little bit before that, these beings were starting to come in, shining some light on a higher awareness. They were a little bit more reserved and quieter than the indigos. And they worked to clear all of that energy from human ascension to get this ball rolling. They were very adaptable and empathetic. They can tend to stay in a dysfunctional relationship for a while or too long, because they can adapt, where that's kind of, it can be helpful, but it can be detrimental if they would adapt to a harder situation for longer than really it was good for them. Their communication really seemed to start to express themselves or come across in their creative arts, music, art, freedom, speech, things like that. They kind of started expressing themselves through creative arts and spirit. It was very important for them to express themselves. It was part of their mission, was expressing this newfound way of thinking and feeling and living. They were the peacemakers with their family and their friends. They started to, this is when some of the food sensitivities started to show up. They started to be sensitive to chemicals in their environment and foods and noise and electricity. And as you know, as electricity and electronics grew and got bigger and bigger and bigger, that's where the sensitivity grew even more down the line a little bit with the indigos. The blue rays tend to have chronic fatigue, and it is because they are here to transform the negative energies into the positive ones. So they're kind of trying to flush all this out. But one thing that they will try to verbalize. They try to verbalize a little bit, but really nobody wanted to listen to them because it was such like a crazy out of this world way of thinking. And so they had to come and kind of break the ice for the indigos to come in. Now the indigos didn't start coming in until the 80s and 90s. That being said, there were some scouts that were sent in earlier, mixing in towards the end of the blue rays coming in. Now the blue rays and the indigos are very similar in some ways, and especially in that time period of overlapping, you'll find blue rays had characteristics of the indigos, and indigos maybe would have been like felt like old school, but the blue rays are they have that feeling of old soul but new soul at the same time, because they're kind of bridging that gap there. Where the indigos came in and they just made waves. They were like, y'all, this is not how we're going to do things. I speak from experience. I am an indigo, so I will be 40 this year. So I am an indigo. Came in to make waves. They don't like authority. They don't like to accept that. They're extremely intuitive and psychic and creative and fearless in the beginning, especially when they come out and they don't have that conditioning and they haven't started to conform to the ways of society. As children, they were like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. That's just the way they were. They would get frustrated if they met that resistance, or if they felt insecure, they would get frustrated with themselves and with whatever it was that they were seeming to bump up against that couldn't push through and break through that wall there. They don't like constriction, and they want to be able to transform and transmute things to different, so that there's more adapting and more people can come together and work together. So they need to be raised in the environment with clear boundaries and structure so that they can feel safe. But they don't really like the boundaries and the structure because it makes them feel contained. So there's a little bit of that pushback where they kind of ran into some issues with that. So in one of the articles that I was reading, it said that and it was a quote, the downfall is that they do not learn the same as others. And I'm going to sort of go off on a side street for a second. As a child raised in the 80s and 90s, I had a very hard time paying attention. I did not learn like the other children. No, I did not. So they don't learn the same. That's true. Is it a downfall? That kind of chapped my cheeks. And I'm going to tell you why. It wasn't until I was a freshman in high school that I got diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. Now, I didn't have the behavioral aspect of it. Like I wasn't getting into trouble. I wasn't getting into big trouble, but I talked all the time. And I would sit next to whomever. My fifth grade teacher ran into my parents. I don't know, I was probably in college. And he said to them, he said, I will never forget Amanda. And my parents are like, oh, okay. And he said, I will never forget Amanda. She talked to everybody. And he, I think, was kind of one of the ones that kind of pushed my mom to say, like, to examine maybe being having attention deficit disorder, because they could. It was by fourth grade, I think, third grade probably, if they were really, But fourth grade is when I started noticing that I could completely check out and go somewhere else in class, not meaning to. It was just like, oops, I stopped listening and I started watching that bird outside the window, and then I noticed that it had a friend and I wondered where they lived, and it's just boop, there it goes. And so one of the things that they say indigos are um, prone to is the lack of attention and the hyperactivity. And so one thing that, well, I digress. My teacher had told my parents, I can stick her next to anybody and she will talk to them. He said, I knew that there were even some kids that maybe they weren't, totally a match. She's now friends with them. He said, I put her, next to his desk. So and I remember this, my desk faced Mr. Platic's desk and I looked right at him. And at one point, I remember this day, we were supposed to do our scholastic reading and fill out our worksheets. And, I'm sitting there and I stop and I lean over. I'm like, Mr. Platic. And we start talking. And then we were talking for a few minutes. And then he's like, you need to do your work. And I got my desk moved out into the hallway because I was talking to Mr. Platic and I was talking to him, and now I was distracting the teacher. Hello, I'm going to talk to everybody. Back to the article, and it said the downfall, and I didn't like that because I feel, and I've done lots of reading, and I have been talking to lots of people about ADD and ADHD and the different qualities of, or the different characteristics of indigos, and how that label started coming around when we started coming through, when the indigos started coming through. And it was because we didn't learn the same. Here's the thing. How can we learn the same when our brains are firing off in different dimensions? When I'm paying attention to spirit, when I was a little kid and could feel, sense, hear spirit, you want me to pay attention to what's going on here? Uh, there's a lot of information coming in. So they have hard times appearing from the outside, or someone who wouldn't understand this, staying on task, staying organized, listening through when we're spoken to directly. That is hard for me. I'm a hands-on. Let me do it. I have to be the movement. I have to be in it. I have to be working it. I have to be in the energy of it. I'm all in no matter what. So that's kind of how that would roll. But we can be indigos can be very distracted very easily as well. Hence the squirrel. Hyperactivity, we tend to fidget. I don't know if you notice, I try so hard, but when I'm really into something, I'm into it. I'm really into it. And that's the energy of it. We fidget with our hands, our feet, we squirm in our seats. Classrooms were hard to have these kids to stay seated. They needed to, move a little about. Some of those who didn't really have that motor in their body, but they had the motor in their jaws, it was talking excessively and impulsively, blurting out answers before, the questions were completed, difficulty waiting their turn. All of these things I remember struggling with as a child, and that's when I got put on Ritalin. And my friends would tell my mom, like, please don't make her go to the office and take that, because I would have to take 2 doses because the extended release didn't work for me, whatever. And my friends would be like, don't go to the office. You're so much more fun without it. And I remember, we had a hard time getting my dosage right because I felt like a zombie. I'm this happy-go-lucky, like, yay. And then I take this medicine and I'm like, I'm so focused that it's almost weird, depending on how you want to look at this. I'm going to pause for a second, and I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit. Now, I'm not trying to say, I don't want to bring up government or any sort of crazy theories or anything like that, but I will say, when it comes down to keeping our pineal gland, which is that the little microphone, that's it kind of turns on. It's your key, it's your doorway, it's your passageway to your intuition. Chemicals in our food and in our water and all that kind of tends to calcify that pineal gland. And then we end up having a harder time connecting directly to God, creator energy. And so that's the same thing with the medicine. It would help. It would help you to concentrate, but it would also shut off that connection to the outer dimensions or the other worlds. I don't want to get too far into this, but there have been some really interesting articles that if you are interested in this, I suggest that you look this up, but it can be a way of really forming and I don't like the word control, but overseeing the way people think and expand their consciousness. And I feel like it's kind of important at this day and age for us to really kind of backpedal and like push away from trying to go down that road of chemicals and sweets and all of those things, and trying to stay more of the natural and organic and wholesome, lots of water, things for our body, really being body conscious, because that is going to help awaken that pineal gland again. And what that does is it reconnects you to the divine. And I feel personally, this is my opinion, but I feel that this day and age, we really need to start getting back to staying into connection with the God within, because if we don't, we'll be able to be manipulated by outside sources. Not trying to go scary, but I'm just saying, you'll be more apt to even just following the opinions of your friends and not thinking on your own terms. And like I said, I'm not trying to digress too far, but that's just definitely something that we need to be aware of. And I encourage you to do your own research on this, to see how you feel about that, and see if maybe pulling out some of the garbage that we put in our mouths and our diets will really help clear that up. And I know for myself, as someone who's always had stomach aches, bad sensitivities to foods, took me 6 years ago, found out I couldn't eat gluten, and I have issues with dairy, and I have a whole bunch of other food sensitivities, mold, mildew, which I knew about, things like that compound it, that actually help my body actually shuts down and doesn't work as high frequency as it could if all of these things are coming through my body, and my body's working on filtering out that. It can't work on keeping my vibration high. So now the going back to the indigos. So the blue rays came on their mission to kind of break the ice and kind of get things going. Indigos came to just clear it up. Like, we're just gonna clear it up. They came through with very strong opinions. They came through wanting to shift humanity even further. If you were born up until like the mid 90s, you could definitely still be a indigo child. So the crystal children came the late 90s through the first decade of the 2000s. Now, like I said before, they sent scouts. So there could be crystal children that are a little older. So it's not like a cut and dry, they overlap a little bit. So you can still get some stragglers, and you can get some scouts that came in early. So they are here, the crystal children are here to develop, mold, and create new ways of living while acting as the bridge between the old and the new again. So they're kind of that bridge again. All three so far, the blue ray, the indigo, and the crystal, are all bridges, part of this bridging. But the indigos is really where they came in to like, we're going to really start to put the pedal down and deconstruct and push down things that just no longer, more equality and more, fairness, things like that. So when the crystal came in, they are born to the indigo parents who have the ability to support and protect these kiddos as they go out on their mission, because the crystal children are healers. They're in touch with their energy. They are more aware of it, especially when they're younger. They usually have a parent that's an indigo. It doesn't have to be both. It can just be one. This can create some between the indigo itself, the indigo parent, and the non-indigo, or maybe it is an indigo, but it's not really jiving as one. That crystal child needs that indigo parent to help, it's hard when you've got Parenting styles are different from everybody, but then you have maybe parenting beliefs. As long as the child knows that it has one parent that it can come to, even if the other parent isn't in 100% belief of it, it still needs to be fair and talked about with that child, even if the other parent doesn't 100% agree. If there's only one, it would be best for the child to at least have an open lines of communication. If one parent isn't really tolerant of the subject, that's okay, because that's that parent path. However, maybe that crystal child is here to move and shake kind of that person to come around, and maybe not. That's just the way it goes. But it, again, ebb and flow. There will be times of communication, and there will be times of maybe we shouldn't talk about this right now. We'll talk about it later type deal. But you don't want to have that crystal child feel that they cannot connect or talk. Crystal children are emotional, and they make decisions on intuition and feeling rather than fact. For some of the indigo parents, because the crystal children, because of their extreme emotions, so it can be hard for indigo parents to really feel like they're getting through to the crystal children, because the indigo parents still have that sense of I don't want to say like old world, but like old school beliefs of, whatever the case may be, but there's going to be a little bit of turbulence there, as there always is, as this consciousness shifts and changes. So the crystal children are great with connecting with young children, animals, vulnerable people. They are like born comforters. They are your animal whisperers. They are the animal communicators. They are the ones who see life in everything. They have this divine imagination, like the indigo kids, but the crystal children, with their imagination / intuition, because I feel like very much so it's two in the same, they have the indigo parent who's going to be a little bit more hip to this belief and able to support and willing to talk to that kid about their abilities, or willing to go there with them, whereas indigos often had parents who weren't really hip to what they were talking about, or who couldn't just really understand where they were coming from. So the crystal children are fearless. Fearless. They are born without this belief in lack. They're just naturally fearless. They are your adventure seekers. They like spontaneous fun. They like excitement, heights. They like to go to places unknown, and they just have this freedom and knowing that they're going to be fine and what they're going to do, and everybody is all right, and it's all good. It's all good. It's just the way they are. They have an incredible sense of creativity and artistic expression. And their vibrant imaginations aren't just that, but that's how they see the world. They're very psychic. They can hear, see, feel beyond your typical person. Part or the downside to that is that they can feel overstimulated. They're very big in the healing arts, and this is where telekinesis, or like telepathy, starts to come in. And not telekinesis. Well, maybe. I guess since I said that, I don't even really talk about that. Telekinesis is the ability to move things with your mind. I personally have not seen that yet. I'm not going to say I never have or never will, because I have no idea. But they are more of your, starting to be more of like the telepathic thinking, in that connecting in consciousness. They're very connected to nature, and they thrive in natural environments, natural foods, things like that. Very good for their bodies. They seem to be more like the mystical, like they want to talk to the fairies, and they want to be outside and spend hours with rocks and crystals and sitting quietly in the nature and playing in the water, playing in the earth elements. They have this very big drive and need for peace. And I mean, I don't know, they just sound like such sweet little souls, that they want to be, and being outside in nature is good for them. It's grounding. I'm not one big on shielding, but shielding is coming to mind. So shielding, so okay, so shielding is coming through as this is how they shield. It's almost like how they would plug themselves back in, like if you're an iPhone and your battery was running low, you're going to plug it back into the wall. That's kind of how these children, the crystals, kind of plug back into their groundedness, is out in nature. Have the biggest hearts and they are extremely forgiving. They're not the type that's going to hold a grudge against anybody. They just love. So they kind of remind me of like an upgraded version of like your excuse me for saying this, but like your old school hippie. They're like the upgraded, more more advanced, spiritually advanced hippie. For sensories, this is where the sensory issues started coming into play. It's they can be overstimulated with now loud noises. They're very empathic when it comes to picking up emotional pains, and emotional well-being of other people. They're highly, highly affectionate and always ready for a hug. They have unconditional love to offer for their friends and their family. They do tend to have, even though they love to communicate this way, they do have a harder time starting in the beginning with communication, but they do end up finding other ways to communicate. For example, whether it's they pick up really quick on sign language because maybe you notice your kiddo isn't speaking as fast as some of the peers or your other children. This kiddo, you'll end up getting a new, like more, you'll end up teaching them little tiny signs and they will use those, but then eventually they come around. They're not emotionally supported. They do have sensitivity of being maybe like dependent or codependent on that parent, because they feel that emotional connection there. And so that they could struggle then if they're not completely, if they don't feel 100% secure, and that balance is off just a little, they might struggle with a little bit of fear, or negative reactions to other people. And then they will tend to be more towards like risk of anxiety, panic attacks, and other like mental health challenges down the road because of the sensitive rawness and bigness of their emotion, and they're willing just to be there. It kind of, if they can get taken advantage of or not supported in the way that they need, that can happen. I've read a couple articles that are like, these kids are going to be your veterinarians, your massage therapists, your school teachers, all because of their strong intuitive ability to sense things. And so I think that I have a few teachers who are intuitive and who are empaths, and the way they love their kids is their kids is in their classrooms is just, it's beautiful. The way they can intuit what they need. They can pick up on much more than just their body language or maybe how they're doing. It's what they're not doing and what they're not saying, and it's what their eyes are telling them when they look into them. The crystal children are going to be amazing when they get to be older and they are doing all of these things. This is the future of humans. Okay, so the rainbow children. Most of these kids are coming, and this is exciting. Like, I was having a ball reading these guys. Most of these kids are coming through from 2010-ish. Again, like I said before, sending scouts in earlier. So there were some rainbows that were coming in with the crystals still. And there's still, some crystals that are trialing in. But as the shift makes it's happened between 2010 and it'll be up until 2030. Might have been a few more scouts even before 2000s, but the characteristics of the rainbow children are fun. This is the new humans. I feel like they're going to need to have these skills in order to really connect. I'm getting ahead of myself. Really connect down the line. So let's jump into it. Okay, so these kiddos, the rainbow kids, are high energy, very attuned to color and vibration. They are passionate about creativity. They love bright colors and colorful environments. Everything is they're enthusiastic about everything. They're just like a big ball of sunshine. They're master manifestors. They can manifest anything anything that they think, they have a very strong healing ability and a little bit of telepathy as well. Their parents are crystal adults. So if their parents were crystals and they were maybe even part of the scouts that came in, it's possible for them to come in and have, so they can be adults now and have rainbow children. So they are here. So even if you're not fixed right in the years for each group or each category, that's okay, because you could have been a scout, or your kid could have been a scout, or your parent could have been a scout. So it's kind of like that. It doesn't always have to run in families. Those Blu-rays, I mean, they really had to push through because they were like the first ones to come in and shift and change. So, and it started to happen, throughout. So maybe you might be the first one in your family. Your kid might be the first one in your family to come through that's really kind of shaking things up a little bit. So the crystal children do not choose dysfunctional families. They are brand new souls. They have no karma to work out. Now, I want to stop and pause and take a little bit of a side street on that. What I mean by that is the indigos would come in and they wanted a little bit of that dysfunction, or they wanted a little bit of that hardship, because it's going to push them to meet their mission, or to come do what their soul is going to help get their soul to do what it came here to do. Well, crystal children are kind of like, we're going to come through and we're just going to spread glitter and sunshine everywhere. So we don't want to have to deal with that. So we are going to let our parents, or even our grandparents come through, do the hard work. The indigo is going to come through, kind of do all that, breaking things up a little bit. The crystal's going to come in, start to lay that groundwork and make sure the healing is good. The rainbows are going to come in and they're just going to high vibe the heck out of everything. So they are all about service, which is why they're here. That's what they're here for. They're here to serve, and they're here to work on healing. They have big eyes like the crystal children, but they are more trusting than the crystal children. The crystal children still knew that there was some work to do, where the rainbows are here like, we just want to high vibe and love everything. The rainbow children are the third generation of the children who've come to help humanity evolve. So their name, let's see, I'm going to read this part. Their name, the rainbow children, came to Earth with a few more other spectrum of ray color. They are born on the 9th dimension of consciousness, the dimension of collective consciousness. They bring joy and harmony to their families. A rainbow child is born to smile, which is accompanied by their huge hearts that are full of forgiveness. They recover from the state of negative emotion quickly. They are emotional masters. They have the ability to read people's feelings, usually revealed as they grow older. Their intuitive abilities, these extra sensories, are going to grow, and this is going to be more of, you're going to start seeing more energy healers. You're going to start seeing more intuitive coaches and teaching. You're going to start seeing abilities show up, and to be an intuitive or to be psychic, you don't have to be one on the internet. Like, you can just be that and bring it into your job. You can be intuitive in your business. You can use your intuitive abilities. You can lean in and work with spirit and with God on using your abilities to help you move forward and help the betterment for whatever that you're doing or working on. And so as these kids come up and start to work, they are really going to expand and bring in the healing arts more to your regular everyday jobs, and they're going to shift the way that they do things, the paradigms and the way that things have been run for a long time. But they're doing this to increase our awareness of consciousness. They have very strong wills because they know how connected they are. They know that this is here, that they're here, they are created to come here and just blow everybody's socks off, because this is their first time around. What do they got to lose? They have no fear because they know what they're here for. They're highly sensitive, loving, forgiving, magical, like the crystal children. But the difference is because they've never been here, that's where they need that functional household. They need it to be peaceful. They're not going to choose the chaos to grow up in or the karma. And when I say karma, it's not like your Hollywood karma. It's the things that your soul is needing to work through. So they don't have to work through any of that because they're here to raise everybody up and move forward. They also don't care what people think. They don't care. So Blu-rays came and they started entering in with this new age way of thinking, new way of thinking. I don't really even like new age way, but the new way of thinking. They came with their creative and their music and their expression and the way they dress and different things like that, and kind of shook things up and heard a lot of opinions. And there was a lot of opinions and a lot of shame put into that, like, well, you shouldn't dress like that, and women should wear skirts, and different things started shifting and changing in all directions. The Blu-rays kind of had that ancestral, like, well, they might have had some of that guilt or resentment. Indigos come through, and because of the way ancestral DNA works, they inherit some of that if they have a parent who was a Blu-ray. And when that comes through, it comes in with that indigo who's really here to shift and change, but then they kind of feel like, well, I kind of have to worry about what everybody else says, or maybe because they were raised by a Blu-ray or another indigo who still hadn't worked out their feelings or worked out, their soul connection here, they might have a hard time. So when it comes, is that karma travels through, so then it might take another, maybe either the indigo eventually later in life or their child, the crystal child, is able to heal that ancestral DNA and the ancestral karma, so that when the rainbow starseed comes, it's all cleared up. Like, we don't have to do that. We're just here to party. We're here to, increase the vibration of everyone. They will spend a lot of time alone. They love to learn things, but they are even there. It's almost like they just need to tap into the knowledge a little, and it comes right to them, and they teach. They are going to be amazing teachers because they're teaching from their heart, but they're teaching from clarity. They're teaching from sheer connectedness. So they're going to have that love for travel and creating and making friends easy. They're just going to have it so easy when it comes to soul mission. I'm not saying everyday life they're going to have struggles. It's not going to be like, because that's, hopefully it'd be great, but they're going to still, they're still having this human experience, but this is on a soul level. So this is what their souls are going to be. They're going to love to set goals, and they're going to achieve them like that. They are going to prefer to work in the background, because they want to really be that backbone and support and nurture and encourage everybody to move on and move forward. So you're going to see them in businesses. You're going to see them in healthcare. They're going to be everywhere. They're going to be in the background of everything, really making sure that things really go in the right direction. Whew, that was a lot of information, but that's the 4 different groups. And it was funny, last night, my husband and I were watching TV, and we were watching a special on the Grateful Dead. And I was listening to the story of Jerry Garcia and his friend. What is it? Wild? No. Shoot. And I kept thinking to myself, are they Blu-rays? Are they indigos? Are they Blu-rays, or are they the indigo scouts? Because as I was listening to this documentary, and they were talking about the way that they came through with their new way of music, the way they would, he was the backup guitarist, and the way he would support Jerry Garcia. They would play their song, but then they would kind of go on to this extra bit of the song. And it was interesting because they were actually channeling the music. They were channeling together. they were riding that same wave of consciousness as they were able to create that music. And that's how it would able to go. And it was beautiful. And people would be like, oh, they must have rehearsed that for hours. Talked about this in this documentary, how into this thing, this new way of thinking. And everybody thought they were crazy, but yet their music was amazing. And so I turned to my husband, he's starting to, I can tell he's got no choice. He's starting to believe. Honey, if you're watching, I'm sorry, I love you. Do you understand what this is about? I'm like, they're channeling. This is the information. They're channeling this music. It's coming straight in. Like that's how all of the musicians do it. You know, it's just this, it comes and just flows in. And he was like, well, I mean, I guess I could see that, you know. And it was interesting because they talked so openly about their spirituality and the way that they believed and the thoughts. And I was like, I'm teaching about this in the morning. I'm so excited. So